Long full week there. It's good to have everybody back. Hopefully you had a good week. You're looking forward to the weekend. Word on the street is it's February next week. Be prepared. It's going to sneak up on us. So again, we are in a classroom setting, so we're following the classroom guidelines. So if you're 2 meters or 6 feet, if you didn't teach science from somebody, you need to have your mask on. Feel free to sit next to somebody, but please have your mask on. If you need to move around, there's some empty seats, so please find a home. We'll be good to go. The wrestling's happening next door. If you've got some time after this, if you want to watch, I think Coach Goff said to be wrestling over there still, so you can pop in and see some student athletes. So, welcome. Gear Up is sponsoring this program, so I got to tell you about that link that I sent out in the email, or the QR code. You don't have to do both. It's one or the other. So if you did the link before you got here, you're good to go. If you haven't completed the form for their grant requirements, it's the QR code on the door. So you can grab that on your way out. It's just for their record keeping and for their grant management. So Gear Up, they did provide Dr. Peppard for us today. So this is coming out of their funds. The books did not make it. They'll be here on the 9th, and we'll make sure we get those to everybody. So as soon as the books come in, The Road to Austin by Dr. Darrin Peppard, that gentleman to my right, we will make sure we get that to you there. So I got to read my Gear Up speech. This presentation by Dr. Darrin Peppard is sponsored by Gear Up Wyoming of UW. Gear Up Wyoming are gaining early awareness and readiness for university programs. It's a federal grant by the U.S. Department of Education and operated through the University of Wyoming in partnership with the Wyoming Department of Education and all Wyoming community colleges. For example, Platte County 1 Gear Up students are served by Gear Up at the Eastern Wyoming College. Gear Up Wyoming serves 2,000 students annually who qualify for free or reduced school lunch. Our objectives are to improve Gear Up student grades, ACT scores, FAFSA completion rates, high school graduation rates, and college admission rates. Last year alone, Gear Up students received $1.265 million in scholarships funding to attend college. For more information about Gear Up student services in Eastern Wyoming, search for Gear Up at Eastern Wyoming College. And if you're interested in setting up professional developments at your school, those are all of ours, search for professional development at Gear Up at the University of Wyoming. So we are happy that Gear Up is involved in our district. They're able to bring to us Dr. Darrin Peppard. I've known Darrin here for a little bit. We worked together while he was the principal in Wyoming and I was the principal. It's good to stay in touch with them, and I just really felt that his road to Austin would be a good little shot in the arm for us on this Friday. So welcome all. We've got board members, we've got staff, we've got directors, we've got principals, we've got all the components of One Platte One in here. So with that, Dr. Peppard, I'll turn him over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffco. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the road less traveled by. That has made all the difference. We're all very familiar with this iconic line from this amazing poem from Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. Today, I want to talk about one of those moments in my life when that road diverged in front of me and I had to make a decision. You see, the truth is, every one of us have those experiences in our lives, whether they're professional or personal, where we've had to make some decisions. And the ramifications of those decisions might be small, they might be large. In this particular instance, the decision changed me not only as a professional, not only as a person, a husband, a father, but genuinely as a human being. Before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about some of my background, because I think it's important that you know something about me to kind of help frame today's conversation. So, as Mr. Jeffco said, I am Dr. Darrin Peppard, and yes, I'm a superintendent of schools, I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm a consultant, but really who I am, and who I feel like I will always be, is a recovering high school principal. For 6 years, I was a high school principal, and I'll tell you, it was one of the most amazing experiences I could ever ask for. My first year as a high school principal, I had gone to visit another school somewhere else in the country, and I'm on the airplane coming home. And you guys know this. When you get on the airplane and you sit down in your row, if there's other people in the row, you have three choices, right? You can put in the headphones, and you can pretend like you're asleep, or you can actually go to sleep. You could possibly pull out your laptop or get out a book and act like you're really engrossed in this because you just don't want to talk to the person next to you. Or you can strike up a conversation. My go-to, first off, I'm a window seat guy. I will get in there, I'm going to get to the window seat, and I'm putting in the headphones and I'm going to sleep. I sleep great on an airplane. But this particular trip, it didn't quite work that way. You see, as soon as I sat down, the person next to me proceeded to work as hard as she could to become my new best friend. Before we had even taken off, I had learned about her 3 children, about her career in marketing at a small software firm, and about how she really, really did not like Cheetos. Somewhere along the line, my new best friend had taken a breath and allowed me to speak. But before she did so, she asked me, "Hey, what do you do?" "I'm a high school principal." Her response, "Oh, I'm sorry." Why is being a high school principal? Why is being a high school principal sympathy worthy? It's not, it's a great job. But boy, she really felt like I deserved her sympathy. "I'm so sorry you have to deal with those kids." I think a lot of people have a misconception of what a high school principal does. I think most people look back on their experiences in school and they think, "Oh, the principal, that's the guy who disciplined me." Not really. Not really. I guess maybe if you had a couple. I look back, it's been 4 years since I was a high school principal. And I'll tell you, there are some things I really miss. There are some things I really don't miss. I'll give you an example. I really miss the first day of school. So as a superintendent, the first day of school, it's pretty exciting. I get to go to all the different buildings and I get to wave to parents and say hi. But man, as a principal, there is no day in the school year, and teachers, you know this, there's no day in the school year your kids are more ready to learn than day one. I mean, think about it. Some of your kids, not all of them, but some of them aren't just ready to learn. They spent 2.5 weeks picking out the outfit they're wearing. Now, let's talk about teachers. I don't know about you, but when I was in the classroom, my first day, holy cow, I was never more ready to teach than day one. I was ready to go. So as a high school principal, that convergence of energy, man, my kids are never more ready to learn than they are right now, and my teachers are never more ready to teach than right now. Let's do this. And I miss that. I don't miss the phone calls from parents who are convinced that everything that happened was the teacher's fault, that the kid was perfect, and even worse, I'm getting the call while the kid's still in the teacher's classroom. I don't miss that. I do miss those moments with the kids like you have going on right over here during wrestling. All of those events where your kids really get to show out. Whether it's the play, or it's the arts, or it's athletics, man, those opportunities to be with kids in those moments when they get to show you what they've been doing, and I really miss that. I don't miss having to eat standing up. I don't miss having to remind myself and others of an IEP meeting, of a lunch duty, any of those kinds of things. I really miss graduation. Now, as a superintendent, I get to go to graduation and I'm there, but it's way different when you're the principal. And not because you stand on stage and the focus is on you, but rather, I did it a little bit different. As soon as it was time for diplomas, I got off the stage. I didn't want to be up there. That's the kids' moment. I let the board hand out the diplomas. I let the teachers read the students' names. That's who they worked with. I just wanted to be right off stage and be the first person. That first handshake, that first hug, that first I love you, that first I'm proud of you, that first I can't wait to see you set the world on fire. I miss that. I don't miss high school dances. There will be no explanation. Not one necessary at all. But what I miss the most was the time that I got to spend in the front hallway with my students. I'm going to talk in a little bit about some of the work that we did to build culture in that school. And I'll tell you, the moments sitting in the hallway, building relationships with kids, building relationships with educators, those are the things that I miss the most. Because in this business, that's what it's about. It's about relationships. It's not about test scores. It's all about building relationships. It's about those stories. I'm going to share some of those stories with you today. And one of the things I want to ask you is this. Raise your hand if you had that teacher. You know, the one that's the reason you're in education. Quite a few of you. Now, I'll tell you, no matter what size room I'm in, I can always guarantee there's somebody in the room who doesn't have that story. Because I don't. I don't have that story. I can tell you stories about a couple of teachers who, for whatever reason, set me back. But I don't have that one teacher that inspired me. But what I do have is that person at my high school, in my case, the high school athletic trainer who I connected with. I tell you that for a reason, because you're going to hear me use the word staffalty a lot. That is staff plus faculty. And teachers, don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. But we have more than just teachers in the class, in this room. And that's by design. One Platte one, everyone makes a difference in the life of a kid. Am I correct? That's what staffalty is. All of us working together. When I was a high school principal, I had a maintenance tech in my building. His job was to set up all of our events, make sure that all the water jugs were filled. He did some maintenance stuff, but really he was there for all of our events. And I'll tell you, that man connected with kids as well as any teacher I've ever seen. You see, it's about people. The product that we have is people. We are in the people business, and we can never forget that. That's what really matters. And that's what really leads me into my story. Because there were moments early in my leadership career where that's not what we were focused on. In truth, I have 3 goals today. And if I can achieve one goal with each of you, and it doesn't even have to be the same one, it would be these. I'd like to remind you of the power you have as educators. And I mean everyone in the room. We have 2 student teachers in the room, and we have board members in the room, and everybody in between. And each and every one of you makes a difference in the life of a kid, and I want to remind you of that. I'm going to tell you a few stories that hopefully either relight the fires or fan the flames. I'm sure a lot of you, the flames are burning strong, but let's fan them even more. I want to challenge you to lead from where you are. Way too often we get lost in leadership being connected to some position or some title. But in reality, every one of you can lead from where you are. And the final thing I'm going to ask of you is change the game. I don't mean go back to your classroom, to your department, and tear everything down and start over. You're doing brilliant work. But maybe there's one thing that you can say, hey, you know, when I listen to Darrin talk, I'm going to turn it up right here. If we can accomplish one of those 3 things with everybody in the room, then this day has been a huge success. So here's what I really want to focus on. When I first started as an assistant principal, I had the wonderful job, and those of you who've held this job will find the sarcasm, of leading discipline and attendance at a high school of 1,100 students. It is a thankless job. But when I first took on the job, it was, yeah, I can't wait to do this. And I asked the teachers, I went around and I sat with them, and I'm like, hey, I'm fresh out of my master's program. Hey, I'm going to be a servant leader. This is what I want to do. Hey, what do you need me to do? What do you need me to do? What can I do? And what I kept hearing was, make them sit down and do what I tell them. I have the big desk, they have the little desk. You need to remind them of that. Put the fear of God in them. One teacher even said, hey, you know that song by Nazareth? You know, Hair of the Dog? For those of you too young in the room to remember the song, you'll know the refrain, now you're messing with a son of a bitch. That was my charge. And I took right to it. I was good at it. I knew where to hide to find them when they were skipping. I knew exactly what buttons to push. I'm embarrassed to tell you that story. I really am. But that was the culture that we had. Our culture really was focused on just everything negative. It was like this culture of no. No, you can't do that. No, you may not do that. It was really difficult. Partway through the year, we're in a staff meeting. Yeah, I said staff meeting, not faculty. It wasn't our culture yet. We're in a staff meeting, and we're trying to solve the two most important questions in education. What are we going to do about hats? What are we going to do about cell phones? What are we going to do about parties? Man. Yeah, that's what we were focused on. I'll tell you that there were two questions that absolutely changed my life. Two questions that on the surface were very simplistic, but in reality represented this massive paradigm shift. Two questions asked in rapid fire succession that completely changed me. It was not, what are we doing about hats and what are we doing about cell phones? Somewhere along the line in this meeting, somewhere between, let's get those calculator thingies and let's hang them on the wall, to the one guy who I think said, if we smash one with a hammer, they'll get the message. Somewhere along the lines, two questions were asked. There's a social worker in the room. She raised her hand and she said, Darrin, why does it always have to be about what they do wrong? Why can't it be about what they do right? My road split in two. I stand here frozen now. I know I stood frozen then. And as I looked around the room, I saw a lot of looks of, wow, how come I hadn't thought of that? I also saw a few looks of, flowery social worker, whatever. But for the most part, I think we all looked at ourselves and said, man, we've been doing this all wrong. These two questions completely change how we're going about our business. Maybe it's time for us not to catch our kids doing it wrong. How about we start focusing on what they do right? What if we actually recognize, reward, and reinforce the good things that kids are doing? And it wasn't even just about kids. It was about adults too. But we started with our kids because the reality is we had tried everything. Our graduation rate was under 70%. Our average daily attendance was like 84%. That's terrible. I think at one point in time we had 13 different initiatives going at once, trying to figure out how do we get them to do what we want them to. Never once did we actually look in the mirror and say, maybe it's us. Maybe we're the problem. Eventually we decided, hey, it's time for us to change our culture. Maybe instead of worrying about curriculum, maybe instead of worrying about some initiative, let's focus on changing our culture. You see, the reality is, culture is kind of that primary hinge point. And no curriculum, no initiative, no effort is ever going to reach its maximum benefit if we don't have the culture in place where people feel valued, where people feel like they're part of something special. I mean, let's be honest. Everybody wants to be seen, everybody wants to be heard, everybody wants to be loved. So what if we make this change? What if we shift gears? And instead of using punishment to gain compliance, we actually start recognizing great things that people do every day. It started real simple for us. Let's change our language. Instead of saying, I have the big desk and you have the little desk, don't forget it, let's maybe shift that. Let's maybe get out from behind that desk. Let's start building relationships with our kids. Actually, let's start treating our kids like adults. This is how our kids used to be at school. We didn't even have a place for them to sit down in the hallways. How can we expect them to act like adults if we treat them like this? The solution did not come from me. It didn't come from our classroom teachers. It came from our maintenance department. Our maintenance department had recognized this and came to me and said, hey, you know, we just ripped out our gym and all those old wood bleachers. Instead of getting rid of that wood, what if we build benches? What if we put some benches up for kids to sit on? I do recall a teacher asking me, what if they vandalize them? My response was, what if they don't? Guess what? They didn't. This thing's falling off. I don't know how Britney Spears does it. Mr. Jeff Cook, I really don't know. But it wasn't just about taking care of benches. That was a small step. Another step was we had this unbelievable problem with trash in our hallways. My predecessor would stand at the front door with trash cans. And as kids came in with their sodas and their coffees from Starbucks, throw it away, throw it away, throw it away, throw it away. We thought there's got to be a better solution, right? So I started doing a little bit of research on Google, and it turns out one of the cleanest places in America that has tremendous flow is every single Disney park. A lot of you have been to Disney parks. They're really clean. And it's not because Disney has 5,000 people running around cleaning up after people. Disney actually did a study. They hired people, and I would have loved to have done this job. They hired people to walk around the park eating the food that Disney has. And then they counted how many steps it took. How many steps does it take to eat this? How many steps does it take to eat that? The shortest distance, that's how close together they put their trash cans. Well, that seems to make sense. We have a problem with trash, let's add more trash cans. Guess what? It worked. Worked like a champ. Okay? But we had to keep going. Let's get some ownership of our school. When my daughter was in school, and I was my daughter's high school principal, coolest experience ever. When my daughter was in school, she was in competitive dance. I know Wyoming just had their state spirit competition. Understand there's a championship coming back here. That is very cool. Very, very cool. But when my daughter was young, we went to these dance competitions. I mean, tons of dance competitions. Now you could probably plug in hockey parent in place of dance parent. You could probably put in baseball. You could put in traveling basketball. Every one of us, it's similar, right? We put 8,000 miles on our car every week, driving back and forth to all these different places. But one of the things that I learned going into all of these schools all over the country was when you first step into a school as a visitor, that school tells you a story. It tells you what the school values. It tells you what's important. It tells you what do they actually recognize at this school. On a professional development day, I grabbed my staff and I said, let's go to the front door. Let's walk down our hallways. I want to know what story are we telling? What do our hallways tell our visitors? You tell me. By the time I got to the end of the front hallway, pretty much the answer was, we like sports. By the way, as a head coach in 2 sports, coaches don't take offense. Okay? I love sports, but that's the only thing we had, a bunch of sports trophies. Schools weren't built for sports. They're built for a lot of things. Let's start honoring and recognizing the things that matter. I had a young kid come up to me, a sophomore named Allie. And Allie was a kid I'd gotten to know really well. She lived down the street. She babysat our daughter. Wonderful kid. Start of Allie's sophomore year, she said, hey, I would like to paint a quote in the hallway. Would that be okay? Yeah, I think that would be great. Let's get this thing started. We got to start somewhere. You know, we used to be this culture of no. I'm going to say yes, let's do this. So Allie came to me with this quote. And I know it's difficult to see, but one day your life will flash before your eyes. Make sure it's worth watching. The kids filled this space with a TV and they took picture after picture after picture of everybody doing everything. and there was this nonstop scrolling of kids' pictures. It was really cool. It didn't end there, but that was a great starting point for us. But it wasn't, again, it's not just about our kids, it was about our teachers. We had to start thinking differently about how we addressed our teachers. Instead of looking to ding somebody for doing something wrong, let's start recognizing all the things they do really well. We started handing out starfish. If you know the starfish story, you know that at the end of the story, the little girl talks about, I'm throwing one back, and I made a difference for that one. So we started buying these starfish stories that had 2 starfish pins on them. You get one, and the other pin, give to somebody else who's inspired you. It started to spread so quickly. People started to feel valued. In reality, it's amazing what people will do, the lengths that they'll go, when they feel like they're valued as a human being. When they know they're trusted, when they know they're loved. All of a sudden, instead of having terrible attendance, our attendance rate started to soar. By the time I left that school, our graduation rate was where we had the highest 2 graduation rates in the history of that school. Because we really started to focus on what truly mattered. We continued to work on building that culture. We pushed on our students to be leaders as much as possible. I'm going to talk more about that in a couple of minutes, but we really wanted our students to be leaders. Christmas break came my first year as the principal there. And I'll tell you, you guys have all been there. That first day of Christmas break, you're exhausted, right? You're worn out. And except for myself, a couple of maintenance techs, and a couple of secretaries, I had the school to myself. And I was just catching my breath. A little after 10 o'clock in the morning, one of my secretaries came in. With tears in her eyes, she explained to me how Allie had died in a car accident that morning. I found myself standing under this quote, tears in my eyes, just in shock. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was a young man named Chase. Chase is probably the best senior leader I've ever had. We just stood and hugged and cried. And very soon it became 5 kids. And then it became 20 kids, and then it became 50, and then it became 100. And before we knew it, between our scaffolding and our kids, we had completely filled the front hallway. Sharing stories about Allie. Candlelight vigil planned right outside. And as the night wrapped up, people started returning to their homes. I remember sitting on the bench with Chase again, and he asked me, "How you doing, Pep?" What did he say? I said, "You know, I'm devastated, but I'm glad I could be here for all of you." And I'll never forget what Chase said. He gave me a hug and he said, "Pep, I'm not here for that. I'm here for you. Just know how much we love you." When you work to build the culture, even the most difficult times, you can find your way through. There's a funny thing about leadership. When we are willing to take a step out, when we're willing to take a chance, when we're willing to take risk, that's where leadership happens. Leadership is not connected to a title. It's not connected to some type of a position. Now, I mentioned earlier about being on the airplane and answering the question, what do I do? So I want to ask you that question. I want you to just think for a moment. Don't come up with some special answer. Just anytime you see somebody that you've never met before, "Hey, what do you do?" What's your answer? What do you tell them? Just think about that. Now, let's flip that on its ear a little bit. Tell me why. Why do you do what you do? Maybe this will help.
How do I know? A lot of people, when they think of the phrase, how do I know, they always want to put the what behind it. How do I know what I'm supposed to do? The question that you really should ask is, how do I know why I'm here? Because when you know your why, your what becomes more clear and more impactful. If you know, like for instance, people know that I do comedy, but that's what I do. My why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. So I can do comedy, I can write books, I can be in a movie, because all of it is motivated by my why. In fact, I have a new web series out called Michael Jr. Break Time. We probably just did the 6th episode. It's on YouTube. So every single Wednesday at 3 o'clock, we drop a new episode on YouTube of Michael Jr. Break Time. What it is it's me. I travel around the country and I do stand-up comedy, in case you didn't know. And in the middle of my comedy set sometime, I'll stop and just talk to my audience. And we've been filming this, and it's pretty cool. So we're in Winston-Salem. I'm gonna show you a clip from Winston-Salem. And I'm just talking to this guy in the audience, and he tells me that he's a musical instructor at a school. So I was like, all right, you're a musical instructor, can you sing? Let me hear you sing a song. So this is what happened at the last episode of Michael Jr.'s Break Time. Check it. So you're a musical director?
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing, you know what I'm saying? All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Right now I'm found, was blind, but now I see.
Okay. Here's what I want you to catch. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what becomes more impactful because you're walking towards or in your purpose.
So I'll ask you again. What is your why? I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to just think about that. What is your why? I'll tell you my why. It's right here. My why is to empower people to take ownership of their stories and release the leader that is within them. Every one of us has the ability to lead. Every one of us has a position to lead. It's just simply making the choice and connecting it to why we do what we do. And the last thing I want to ask of you today is I want you to change the game. I told you this doesn't have to be this massive transformation. I'm not asking you to completely change what you do. You don't have to be quite the game changer that, say, this guy was. And maybe you don't know the story here, but those of you who do follow sports might know who this is. Someone shout it out. Who is it? Babe Ruth, right? Babe Ruth. You talk about a game changer. Prior to being sold to the New York Yankees, Babe Ruth won 3 World Series for the Red Sox in 6 seasons. After being sold to the New York Yankees, he won 4 World Series for the Yankees. That's not the game changer. If you're a Sox fan like me, you know you went 86 years between championships. That's a game changer. Now, I'm not asking you to change the game in that dramatic a way, but what I am saying is maybe just one little step. I'll tell you one of those little steps that I took when that moment came, when the road diverged in front of me. I said, you know, I'm going to change the way I address my students. You know, I told you about that guy earlier who was really good at catching them doing it wrong. It took a lot of conscious effort to really think about how do I do that different. And I think I was doing it better than I realized. But I wasn't sure until about 2 years ago when I met a young lady named Michaela. I was at a conference, and one of my colleagues came up to me and he said, hey, Darrin, I got to introduce you to Michaela. Okay, cool. Hi, Michaela, how are you? And she said, Pep, it's great to see you again. I didn't remember Michaela. Okay, lots of kids. When I was a high school principal, I had 12 to 1,400 kids. I didn't know every single one of them by name, but it felt like I should here. Michaela refreshed my memory that I was her high school principal only her freshman year, and that during her freshman year, she was having the worst year of her life. Her mother had passed away from cancer. Her father was really struggling to cope with that. She was the one holding everything together. And one day, in the hallway, the anger boiled over and Michaela couldn't take it. It was just the words of one other kid that set her off, and she launched into a fight. There were only 2 of us as administrators available that day, one of my assistant principals and myself. He took the one girl, and apparently I took Michaela with me. The guy that I told you about at the beginning would have cranked this out in 10 minutes. This is easy. 5 days, see the officer on your way out for your $150 fine, get out. We were dealing with a fight a week back then. By this point, it was maybe 2 a year. But that's not how I addressed it. Again, I have been really focusing on how do I speak to my students differently. According to Michaela, I made sure she wasn't hurt. I got her calmed down, got her some ice for her hand, got her a bottle of water. And then she told me that on the way out of the room, I just patted her on the shoulder and I said something to her. And I'll be honest with you, it's something I've probably said 1,000 times, if not 10,000 times, to kids. Make good choices. There's a phrase that I adopted. In fact, I say it so often now I don't even realize it. Now, after seeing Michaela again, I started catching myself going, hey, wow, I do say that. But it wasn't about what I said. It was about what Michaela said next. She said, Pep, I'm a teacher, not because of you, because of some other people, but I want you to know that in my classroom, I have quotes everywhere in my room. I loved, when I was at the high school, all the quotes we had everywhere. But my favorite quote is the one over my desk. Make good choices. We don't realize sometimes the impact the words that we have will have on our children. I certainly didn't until that one. Make good choices. I heard from your leadership team earlier today that 1, be nice. Be nice. It's a great phrase. Kids are going to repeat that. Someday somebody's going to say, hey, I remember when you told me to be nice. It's really important, I think, that we never lose sight of everybody carrying something with them. When I tell Michaela's story, I'm constantly reminded of the impact that the death of her mother had on her. Every one of us is carrying something with us. And sometimes we just really don't know. Right now, obviously, it's a really tough time. Everybody's carrying stuff around. I had a conversation once, and And in my district, it might be true here too. I know it's true in a lot of districts. If you want to take extra time off around a holiday, in my district, only the superintendent can approve that. I didn't create the policy. It's just what it is. I got an email from a teacher one time, and she said, "Hey, Darrin, I'd like to meet with you." Great. That sounds good. Tell me when you're available, I'll come to you. Leaders, if you're not going to your teachers, going to the people in the departments, and making them come to your office, stop it. Get out and go to them. So anyway, this young lady's name is Amanda. And Amanda had reached out. She just needed to take one extra day around Labor Day off. I could have just very easily just emailed Amanda and said, "Hey, request granted, have a good time." But instead I kept the appointment. I knew Amanda was having a little bit of a tough time. I knew she had some really high SEL kids in her classroom that were really a struggle for her. So when I went in and sat down with Amanda, and I asked, "Hey, tell me what's going on," she told me the story. I already knew. Yeah, of course. You can have that time off. But it's what I asked her next that mattered. "Amanda, how you doing? I mean, really, how you doing?" And biting through her lip, here came the tears. And she proceeded to tell me the story of these 3 different kids who are really a challenge for her and how hard she's working to help the kid that every time there's a loud noise, he hides under his desk. It has everything to do with his father shooting himself. She tells me about the other kid who, anytime something gets tough, he gets up and runs away. This is a 5th grade classroom. She's trying to do everything she can. She's holding back the emotion. And my wife and daughter will tell you I'm a real easy cry, and it didn't take long before Amanda and I are both crying. When I got up and left the room, I just said to her very simply, "Hey, Amanda, tell me, what can I do to help you?" This. Just come listen to me. I don't expect you to solve my problems. Just come listen to me. When we're working with our students, when we're working with other adults, it's something that's really critical for us not to lose sight of. We're all carrying something around. Just listen. You see, what happens often is we will misidentify a kid, we might misidentify an adult as being resistant, not being on board, or just struggling. When in reality, 99% of the time, they just want to be heard. That was a big shift for us in our culture. Let's get out of our offices, let's go spend time with our people, go spend time with our kids. I told you I spend a lot of time sitting in the hallways, just talking with my kids, because I wanted to make sure that they had a chance to be heard. I'll tell you one more story about a young man named Jeremy. So as a high school principal, again, I had 12 to 1,400 kids. And it was impossible for me to know everybody by name. There were days, though, I probably knew between 800 and 900 of our kids by name. The freshmen were always the most difficult. And the reason for that was, unless they were involved in a lot of things, typically you didn't get to know their names right away. Jeremy was the exception. I got to know who Jeremy was probably within the first 2 weeks of school. He was that kid. You've all had Jeremy in class, maybe with a different name. Jeremy was a tough kid. He was obstinate. Jeremy didn't come to school a lot. Jeremy's hygiene wasn't exactly spectacular. Jeremy was tough to be around. I got to know Jeremy because he was in the office all the time. But I knew that maybe, just maybe, in my role, because I didn't hand out disciplinary consequences, I wasn't the one in the classroom with him, maybe I could build a relationship with Jeremy. And it started very simply, just by calling by name. Jeremy, how you doing today? By the end of his freshman year, he would actually give me knuckles. It was a step. It wasn't a huge step, but it was a step. Late in his freshman year, I sat down on the bench with Jeremy and I said, "You know what, Jeremy, what's the plan? Just tell me what the plan is. You're not passing anything. Tell me what you want to accomplish." And he said, "You know what, Pep, I have no interest in high school. The day I turn 16, I'm out. I have no desire to be here. My mom didn't graduate from high school. My dad didn't graduate from high school. My brother didn't graduate from high school. There's nothing here for me." Freshman year comes and goes. Jeremy passes one class. I don't know how, but Jeremy passed one class. So as a sophomore, he has 0.5 credits. Sophomore year is a little bit more of the same, but I'm going through and looking at grades at a point, maybe the end of the first quarter, and I notice on the DNF list there's a name missing. All I could think was, did Jeremy transfer? And I looked, and no, sure enough, there he is. Straight C's. Yeah, I got through to him. No, I didn't end up doing it. Jeremy was on probation. Jeremy had landed himself on probation, and in order to stay under the radar and not get himself sent to the boys' school, he just had to pass classes. So he was putting in enough effort to pass classes. The fist bump had become a handshake, kind of our own cool handshake. And we had quite a few conversations, but continued. When I turned 16 this summer, I'm out. Jeremy's probation was extended. Jeremy continues in high school. And his junior year, he's doing okay, but he's not doing great. He's just continuing to move along. But you know what? We're starting to build more and more of a relationship. He'll at least talk to me about things. I kind of know what's going on. And then a period of time goes by, and it's been like 10 days since I've seen Jeremy. And I asked one of my APs in the hallway, I said, do you know where Jeremy is? He didn't know, but the probation agent did. She pulled me aside and she said, Darrin, you need to know that Jeremy's in jail, along with his mom and his brother. What we didn't know about Jeremy, and certainly that Jeremy didn't want us to know, was that his mom was having him and his brother go back and forth to Salt Lake City 2 and 3 times a week as a drug mule. And they were picked up, obviously, with a vehicle full of drugs. The next day I saw Jeremy come in the front door, and I'm hearing the bell ringing, and I know he needs to turn right and head to his science class. But he doesn't. He comes right at me. Pep, we need to talk right now. Right now. Okay? Let's talk, man. What's up? Told me the whole story, including that as the only minor, he was being asked to testify against his mom and his brother. Pep, what do I do? What do you say? None of us is prepared to answer that question. I told Jeremy the only thing I knew to say, I love you, believe in you, and you're going to be okay. He said, the other thing is I got to graduate on time, or I'll have to go to jail. We got this. Go to class. We got this. Yeah, we got this. I know his counselor thought I was out of my mind when I said, hey, let's put Jeremy a plan together to graduate. On time. But somehow Jeremy continued to work hard, continued to get the stuff done. He went to summer school and actually passed everything in summer school. The senior year came. I mean, the kid shows up, his hair's combed, he's got clean clothes. I mean, wow, he's a new kid. He's got a great attitude. I mean, now we're on full-on bro hug. I mean, this kid is a new kid, and he's doing great. And everything I keep hearing from him, Pep, I got this. Pep, I got this. We are going to make it. It's awesome. We're going to make it. We're 2 days away from graduation. Jeremy has one assignment left. It's a term paper in his senior English class. On the way out the door, he's like, things basically done. It's due at midnight. I got this. I don't know if I've ever felt more proud of a kid who wasn't my own than in that moment. And the next morning, we're about 5 minutes into the day, and up the stairs, slamming open a door, freshman Jeremy is back. He's profane, cusses me out, cusses out everybody he can find. I don't need this place. Nada. Whoa. Slow down, buddy. Let's talk. Managed to get him calmed down enough. He told me that his senior English teacher had said, hey, your paper was due at midnight. You didn't turn it in until 4 a.m. See you in summer school. I went downstairs and had a conversation with the teacher. And I'll be honest with you, there are times where I'm always going to have my teacher's back. I'm always going to have my teacher's backs, but let's be honest. There are times, as adults, we're wrong. We're just flat wrong. I asked the teacher, I said, tell me a little bit about what you know about Jerry. I had him as a freshman. I had him as a sophomore. He was worthless then. Obviously, he hasn't learned his lesson. How can we not know the story of our kids? So I shared the story, including that morning, I'd gotten a phone call from the probation agent. Jeremy's mom had been released from prison the night before, and she went straight to his foster home. The kid didn't turn his paper in by midnight. Who cares? Through tears, she said, I will grade this paper right now. Jeremy got an A on the paper. I guarantee he didn't deserve it. They got an A on the paper, and he graduated. We had started a tradition at our school where we wanted every student, and this came from our students. Our students wanted everybody wear a white stole with their graduation gown. The story behind the stoles, they're called the stoles of gratitude. On the backside of the stole, the graduate writes a message of gratitude, of thank you to someone who's made a difference in their life. And after graduation, they give that stole to the person who made a difference. After we started doing this, I had grandparents, moms, dads, you name it, would call me and say, thank you for doing that. It's such an incredible tradition. Every one of those stoles has a special story. And I have Jeremy's. We can make a difference in the life of our kids. We just have to be willing to change the game. We have to be willing to put that extra step forward. When Mr. Jeffco called me and said, hey, I want you to come talk to One Platte One, he said, I want you to give him a pep talk. I do this thing every week, about a 2-minute video called Pep Talk. Goes out on all my social media, and there was one that I really felt was perfect for today, so I want to share that.
Hey, on today's pep talk, I want to talk about a text message I got last night. Just sitting there kind of winding down, and a friend sent me a text message and said, hey, I appreciate everything you're doing. I want you to know that you're inspiring people out there. And what it made me reflect on is not myself, and this is not about me, but about leaders in general. And by that I mean anybody who's in a leadership role. You don't have to have a title to be a leader. So I think about classroom teachers, like this person who sent me the message. She's a great leader. I think about building leaders. I think about our staff who are driving our buses every day, and our folks who work in the cafeteria and in maintenance, custodial, our admin assistants. The work that we're doing right now truly is inspiring. I'm inspired by that work. I love seeing what I'm seeing from people right now. As we head into this Labor Day weekend, I think it's important that we take some time to reflect a little bit. Maybe reach out to 2 or 3 people. Follow my friend's lead and reach out to 2 or 3 people who have inspired you during this time. Let them know you're thinking about them. Let them know you appreciate them. I mean, let's be honest. Everybody is really working hard. And that doesn't matter whether you're in a face-to-face environment, whether you're online, hybrid, and any other term you want to put on it. If you're working with kids right now, and you're working for kids right now, then the work you're doing is inspiring. So take some stock, think about it a little bit, and the challenge for you today, or throughout the course of this Labor Day weekend, is to reach out. 3 people, at least. 3 people who are inspiring you right now to keep doing the work you're doing, and you love the work they're doing. That's what I got, folks. I hope you have an awesome weekend. Get your cup refilled. Build up some energy. Have a real awesome day.
Something I don't think you hear often enough, and I didn't tell you this, but I'll preface this with letting you know, I'm a Wyoming kid through and through. I might live in Colorado, but I grew up here. I'm a Wyoming kid. My daughter's a Wyoming high school graduate. On behalf of parents, on behalf of fellow educators, thank you so much for the work you're doing. Your work is inspiring, it's impactful, and I really appreciate everything that you do. My final thought for you is this. 2 roads diverged in a wood. I took the road to Austin. I'd love to have you come and join me. Thank you so much. Oh yeah, and now the best part. I get to tell you you could leave. Mr. Jeffco told me, hey, I don't need to get up and tell him that. You can tell him. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy some wrestling. Enjoy a weekend. Take care. Thank you.